Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Behind the Mask, Understanding Anxiety, Perfectionism, and Masking. We have over 540 registrants, so clearly this is a very big topic. And I just want to point out that we do also have Spanish translation tonight. In case you're not familiar with REAL, we are a Silicon Valley-based nonprofit that helps twice exceptional students thrive in school by working with both parents and educators to increase awareness and understanding of strategies that are strength-based and neurodiversity affirming so that we can address their needs successfully. So just in case you're not familiar with 2E, we like to use the Bridges model, which is that children have distinguishing strengths, high abilities, or potential in one or more areas. And at the same time, they also have complex challenges such as autism, ADHD, anxiety, dyslexia, or something else that keeps them from showing what they know fully at school. And so when these two combine, you really have to address the student that is green, the green part, not just the yellow or the blue. And that makes them a complex student to support in the classroom. And we'll learn about some of that tonight. And so they really need support in both simultaneously. So Real offers many services for parents, including this expert speaker series that you're attending tonight. We also offer a bi-monthly Zoom support group, a Google group with hundreds of members where you can ask questions and get answers about resources and any questions about things you're going through with your children. We also have downloadable parent toolkits on all kinds of topics from how to talk to your school to I just got a diagnosis, now what? We have a lot of online resources. I'll show you one in a second. A whole list of schools and how to choose a school for your 2E learner. And then we have two paid options, which are small facilitated groups of up to 8 parents who talk about specific topics, such as there's one going on right now about motivation, and then one-on-one consultations if you'd like to go more in depth about your learner. Here's an example of some of the parent toolkits, all downloadable for free on our site. And Callie, I think, is putting links in the chat. And we have a 46-page IEP guide specifically for twice exceptional students in California in the Bay Area, although 90 to 95% of it is applicable anywhere. We know that it's different to try to get an IEP for your twice exceptional learner, so we hope this is helpful to you. And for educators, we do custom professional development. One of the most popular things we come out and do is a learning difference simulation, which really develops empathy and has been really a moving experience to be a part of. But we can customize all kinds of professional development. We also have a lot of recorded talks on many topics, from slow processing speed to anxiety to writing challenges, and other online resources, and a bi-monthly educator newsletter. And Real has developed an educator model that goes through both by grade level and all these petals, develop how to develop connection, embrace flexibility, attend to strength, and reframe behaviors, and give specific examples under each one to help you work with your 2E learners. So we're coming to the end of our fall events, but all of the previous events, the recordings are on our site and on our YouTube channel. And there is one more event coming up on November 20th about mental health through our neurodiversity education series. And if you sign up for Real's newsletter, we will notify you in a couple of weeks about our spring lineup. So we're very excited for that. And our next 2E parent support group will be on January 8th. And the sign up for that is already on our site. You can follow Real on all these different places, or join our Google group where you can ask and answer questions again. And now, as you can see by these sparkly photos, we have two very dynamic speakers tonight. So Rainn Stone is an ADHD 2E, trans non-binary. You'll have to LICSW, and owner of Rainy Days Counseling, a telehealth practice serving queer and neurodivergent folks of all ages, with a special focus in children and adolescents and trauma-focused care and play therapy from a somatic and attachment, social justice focused, and parts work perspective. Rainn also frequently presents from both lived experience and clinical wisdom to help folks navigate this thing called life. And Jamie Roberts is a licensed marriage and family therapist who identifies as neuroqueer and actively shares about her later in life diagnosis of autism and ADHD. Jamie is the founder of Equilibrium Counseling Services, a teen and young adult mental health center where all identities and brains are celebrated. In 2024, she founded NeuroPebble as a central location to provide neurodivergent affirming and educational training. She is the author of the book Mindfulness for Teen Anxiety and is an active speaker on the neurodivergent, LGBTQIA+, and teen topics. So I'm going to pass it over to them. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen and get that set up. Here we go. It's all visible.
They are
Perfect.
good.
All right. Well, we are excited to be here today and be a part of this conversation and share both our lived experience as well as our clinical experience. So we'll be presenting today Behind the Mask, Understanding Anxiety, Perfectionism, and Masking in 2E Kids. My name is Jamie Roberts. And what are we talking about today, Rainn?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about behind the mask. So we're going to be talking about understanding how anxiety and masking show up in 2B learners. We're going to give you some tools to help reduce that perfectionistic thinking and self-criticism, help you understand why your kid seems so capable at school and then is exhausted when they get home. And, why do we seem fine on the outside, but then we're having these meltdowns? Where does this pressure to be perfect and to pass as neurotypical come from? And so really leaving you with some practical strategies to create safer spaces for everyone.
Mhm. And to just add on to that fantastic introduction of who we are, wanted to add additional information. So, like was said, I'm Jamie Roberts. I'm in Southern California. I have a group practice. I also run clinical trainings for clinicians on neurodiversity affirming care. Teenagers are my absolute favorite human beings. I think they are so cool and have so much room for growth and development and understanding of self and unique perspectives that I just think they're so fun to work with. My first book, Mindfulness for Teen Anxiety, came out in 2022 and is available. And my second book, Neurodiversity for Teen Girls, will be out next spring. I believe the wait list, I just Googled it right before this, and it is listed on all the websites, which is very exciting. But I received my ADHD diagnosis at 29 and my autistic diagnosis at 32. So it's been a big learning curve, but I've been working with in the neurodivergent space for over 13 years clinically. And I am a former gifted kid that went into mental health and followed that very direct path and hit those burnout spots, was the perfectionistic, and wanted to become who I needed when I was younger. And that's why I do what I do and why I'm here today.
I love that. Yeah, and I am Rain. They, them. I have rainy days counseling. I love kiddos, whether it be internal kiddos or actual kiddos, because really, are they that much different? And I'm really about like, let's stop just pulling people out of the water. Let's swim upstream, find out why they're falling in, and save them before it gets that far. And I was also late diagnosed. I found out I was autistic in grad school after actually doing a research study on late diagnosed autism and got tested. And it's like, oh yeah, you actually are autistic and ADHD. And so I now have had the privilege of working with so many people across a variety of contexts. And if I found one thing, it's our nervous system speaks. We have to listen. And we all have a different way of doing that. So I'm also two E, former burnout gifted or former gifted burnout kid, whatever. Clearly I still mix up my words. And so, being able to navigate those aspects of burnout and come to the other side and have this platform to share like how to get through the hard stuff, because the hard stuff is always going to be hard, is such a great privilege. So I'm excited to be here with you guys.
And so today we're going to be talking about like distinguishing anxiety and perfectionism and how those work together and how anxiety or how masking then covers up anxiety and the perfectionism that's going on in the really chaotic internal world that your teens may or your kids may be experiencing. So we'll go over some kind of general overarching anxiety traits that we tend to see in our neurodivergent 2E kids, and how we're going to focus in a little bit more on autism, but like how the autistic experience of the sensory overload, the really connected brain that takes in so much information the expectation of masking, the double empathy problem, PDA, RSD, all of the fun acronyms, that go into why kids mask, where the perfectionism is coming from, how it can be a coping mechanism, but how it also can feel harmful. Um, we'll talk a bit about the sensory piece, about how to regulate the nervous system sensory wise when a kid is feeling that really intense anxiety and they're going through those steps, how you, as a parent, a caregiver, an advocate, a teacher, a clinician, can also help guide kids in understanding what their nervous system needs in order to re-regulate, or how to tap into the dopamine need of where some of the anxiety and perfectionism comes from, how we can tap in to the brain system to get done the things we need to get done and not overdo it. And how that can feel like flooding and lead to the crash and the emotional overwhelm and the burnout and the meltdowns that we feel. So we'll tap into each of these tonight. Mind you, like this is a really big topic, and we've got like about an hour to talk, and then we want to open it up for conversation. So we're going to do our very best to give as much information. Given that we're both autistic, we tend to do like a bottom up approach. So we want to give you like all the base information of like where this is coming from, why it is happening, what the brain and body are trying to do, so that we can know what the tools are, what the resources are, and how to kind of come up with a solution, as opposed to starting with like, boom, here are the coping mechanisms. But like, we also need to know like why it's happening for your particular kid. So that's kind of where we're coming from with giving you the information, and then we'll have it open for questions after we've kind of downloaded all of that. Sorry, my cat just laid on my keyboard. Find my tools. So what this will all, is it loading? There we go. What this will also look like when anxiety and masking are coming up, we tend to see a lot of high masking people, their neurodivergent traits tend to go unseen or unnoticed because the mask is so strong, or because that's been so perfected, or we've been in social skills classes that we've learned how to portray neurotypicality and then end up burning out after. And so how do anxiety and masking go hand in hand? Often the anxiety comes from the feeling of unknown, or unknown expectations, or often unclear expectations, especially if you've got a kiddo who like needs all the context. Like, I need to know, why am I doing this? For what purpose? How's it going to support me? Why am I doing busy work at school? Right? Like that buy-in is really important. And then especially if there are unknowns, our brain, oh, I'm going to go into the brain. I'm jumping ahead. The brain needs to fill in that unknown. And so we tend to fill it in with worst case scenario, which comes into how we want trying to control situations. If something is, I don't know it, I'm going to try and control it the best I can so that it is very predictable and I don't get thrown off. My anxiety doesn't increase because I have full control. And that full control can turn into like masking of like, I've got it under control. Everything's fine. I can handle it. I don't need anybody's input. I've got it. And that perfectionism builds up until it hits that overload and it crashes and everything falls apart. And it starts to kind of create this cycle of like, was it boom and bust of just like, we've got it, we've got it, we've got it. No, I don't. And we kind of see that ebb and flow until it maybe reaches the point of like, I'm not even going to try anymore, because it always blows up. So we'll talk through kind of what that cycle looks like and how we can support our teams throughout that.
So when we're exploring masking in 2E kiddos, I want us to kind of really take into consideration that and understand that it's not like a simple put on a polite face kind of masking, right? It's also not a seaweed mask. It's a deeply complex, layered experience of, like Jamie mentioned, trying to be safe. And it gets built from years of feedback, sometimes subtle and sometimes really direct, about what's acceptable and what's not, and who's acceptable and who's not. Kiddos spend their entire day reading a room, often with vigilant adults and other peers who are also reading the room and figuring everything out. And they're scanning facial expressions, tone, expectations, and emotional climates with terrifying accuracy in terms of our 2E kiddos often. They didn't make this stuff up. The mask didn't appear out of nowhere. They learned it because they're naturally, not because they're naturally socially gifted, but because survival, depends on predicting people's reactions in a lot of situations. And so hiding intensity to fit in or not be too much isn't just about avoiding being labeled as dramatic. It's really about making sure that you're not ostracized. Hiding the dysregulation and staying the good kid is about maintaining the role as the easy, compliant, high achieving child, because that's the one that people praise because they don't require too much. Hiding sensory burnout or demand fatigue becomes necessary because those things get interpreted, as choices, defiance, non-compliance, or or emotional inability to be emotionally mature and things like that. But rather, it's just exhaustion. And when folks are constantly scanning the environment to do social math and figure out what's expected as a form of masking, can't tune into themselves either. And then, another mask that I see with a lot with 2E kiddos and in my own experiences became meeting expectations as a form of identity. I am what you expect of me. I am what I can achieve and I am what I can do because I don't have time to figure out who I am outside of that because I'm too busy trying to make sure I'm staying safe. So that becomes a tangible, easy thing to come back to. And then, finally, like hiding difficulties with transitions and context shifting. There are so many expectations on our kids to be adaptable. And I mean, how many class periods are there in some school days? 8? If I had to switch classes 8 times a day, I too would be having a meltdown on the floor. This is something I told one of my kids recently. And so it's really, when we're talking about the mask, it's about identity work. Masking becomes a child's entire relational strategy. If I can just hold it together while I'm at school, if I can just keep being the good kid, if I can be impressive enough, maybe I won't inconvenience anyone as we'll talk about later with support needs. And the bottom line though is masking isn't sustainable. It erodes that authenticity and creates a self-image based on performance rather than truth. And so then we get to the burnout and identity confusion and shutdown and depression and anxiety and all the other things. But the mask gets praised itself, oftentimes, the calmness, the capability, the composure. And we don't even realize that we're praising a kid sometimes for silencing their inner truth. And so something I want us to kind of keep in mind through the presentation is, what would this kid be like if they were allowed to take the mask off, if safety, not performance, was the expectation? Next. Yay. Um, so kind of building off of that, a common 2E experience is getting a lot of academic validation. And so the thing is many twice exceptional learners believe that achieving high grades compensates for their perceived social struggles, which then creates a cycle where academic success becomes a measure of self-worth and acceptance, going back to I am what I achieve because, well, I haven't had the energy or time to figure out anything else. And also it didn't come naturally encoded, maybe, or it's been eroded over years of social expectations. And so in this way, academic validation becomes a lifeline, emotional lifeline, but it also becomes a trap, right? Kids learn if I'm exceptional, people will be proud of me. If I struggle, they'll be disappointed or confused, which then morphs into often the only thing tethering them to their self-worth. And the social pressure added of, the pressure to excel academically often leads to feelings of inadequacy in social situations, right? I'm good at my grades, but I'm not good at, talking to Jimmy Joe over there. I remember even growing up, my mom would tell me, like, for someone with such book smarts, you really don't have any street smarts, just constantly. And I'm like, I know, but at least I read the almanac, okay? And, we can see how that erodes someone's self-confidence. I made it a joke, and I still do even as an adult, but there's still that little bit of, actually, that hurts underneath the just joking. And with the social pressure, people inflate the 2E experience of being gifted with, excess maturity sometimes, assuming that these kids should be more self-regulated, more flexible, more resilient, more self-aware. They get used as the bell curve in classes. But being gifted doesn't protect a kid from sensory overwhelm. It doesn't make transitions easier. It doesn't reduce anxiety around expectations or give them adult level emotion regulation. There's a play therapy book, and one of my favorite things it says is kids are not or kids are not miniature adults. And sometimes we expect them to be. Um, And then kids internalize the message of I should be able to handle this. I should be more mature, less sensitive. They start to believe that these are their needs are failures rather than developmental realities.
And what I'd just add to this as well is often with 2E kids being in maybe public school settings, they're the top of the bell curve, but then they're bored. And now school comes easy. They don't have to put in effort. They're bored. And maybe then they're moved to a school that is more accommodating or challenging or meets their intellectual or academic like capability. But now everybody in the class has that 2E or that ability to perform academically. Now they're in a really rigorous. So it's a very big extreme transition from what the peer pressure is or what the kind of the norm is in that space, and then that can also be like a jarring like nervous system experience there. Not that it shouldn't, we shouldn't put them in those like more complex like complex situations, but like understanding that transition space, what that preparation may be, how that may shift their academic pressure or the perfectionism and how that shows up. So, what I often like to talk about is the neurochemicals and the intensity that can come with and where that brain biology piece is coming in for the anxiety and the perfectionism. So, a lot of our neurodivergent kiddos, if we're talking about the brain, we're talking about the prefrontal cortex, especially with ADHD and autism, and that is often controlled by dopamine. So, a lot of behavior is controlled by dopamine seeking and how to maintain that stimulation. And that it's all or nothingness, right? And so what we see a lot is adrenaline is a very like clear way to increase dopamine production. Well, what creates adrenaline? Anxiety increases adrenaline. Adrenaline releases dopamine. Dopamine leads to regulation. And so often we'll see with like ADHDers that dopamine seeking will get more and more intense. And we might often think about it with like impulsivity or extreme sports or hyperactivity. But especially if you have a kid who is high masking or has internalized their brain wildness, if it's fast thoughts, if it's emotions, and they've internalized everything, that's going to manifest as anxiety. And that's going to build up that intensity to release the adrenaline, to release the dopamine. And it actually becomes a regulating factor in which the anxiety and the perfectionism allows them to perform at school and manage their executive function because there's like quick deadlines, and those deadlines and the procrastination to the deadline allows that prefrontal cortex to go online and do the executive function tasks. So it becomes a very clear coping mechanism of I can write a whole paper in one night because I'm at the deadline and my adrenaline is flowing and I've got enough dopamine and my brain can do it. It's not necessarily, well, you've avoided it, you're not trying, why are we not doing this? But how do we tap into understanding the dopamine need of the brain and how the deadline might actually allow the brain to complete those tasks in a more succinct way? And working with the kid, we don't want the deadline to increase the anxiety to where like they're having a meltdown, but how do we utilize that in knowing, okay, we need to make sure the night before a big paper is due that we do have that evening cleared, because odds are we are going to procrastinate until then because it is hard for your brain to get online without that level of pressure. Um, some other things that might look like this is we will see with the increase of adrenaline, it might also be where self harm comes into the conversation or pain regulation, because when the body experiences pain, it releases adrenaline and adrenaline releases dopamine. So a lot of our kids, especially middle school, high school, when everything is feeling like too much, might redirect to a way in which the body knows more what to do with physical pain than emotional pain. And then it releases the adrenaline from the injury to release the dopamine, and it's regulating for a minute. And then the pressures build again. And so understanding why some of this is happening and how it is like a form of self medicating and a coping mechanism, and not shaming it, but redirecting it and utilizing it for what purpose it is, of that this has served you and these are the ways it has worked, and how can we switch it so it's not causing harm but use it with intentionality. I've now allowed myself, I used to beat myself up about doing presentations the night before or the morning of something being due, and now I set deadlines, and if there's a deadline I will do it right before the deadline, but I've created the space in my schedule and given myself that permission that I'm allowed to do it because I know that's when it's going to happen. Whereas before, I would be constantly in my head, why aren't you working on it? You need to be doing that. Why are you avoiding it? This is so unprofessional. You should know better. It's been years. Why can't you figure this out? And there's just like this heavy pressure of like, well, then I'm faking it in front of everybody as this great professional, but I haven't done it yet. But now that I've allowed myself and understand how my brain processes that information, knowing that those deadlines help release the chemicals in my brain to do the task has shifted from shame to acceptance. So some ways that you can also work with the brain chemistry to support your kids, um, in more, I don't want to say healthy and unhealthy, but like more adaptive ways that might be less harm causing. So we focus on like a harm reduction route. We don't want to do all or nothing, right? Because then that also creates perfectionism. If like it's one time of like I'm not allowed to have meltdowns anymore because I get in trouble for whatever reason, the expectation that a neurodivergent person is not going to have a meltdown ever again is an automatic fail. So if we can create those stepping stones along the way of like, did the intensity change? Did the duration change? Did the level of impact change? When were you able to speak about it? Those are all achievements and they're going to change differently depending on the situation. So we want to work on that harm reduction of like, maybe the perfectionism is not going to go away, but how can we work with the perfectionism? How can we decrease it to a place in which it is manageable? So sensory is a great way to work with the body to help regulate the nervous system because that's what we're seeing. That's the masking is protecting the nervous system. The perfectionism is a result of the nervous system feeling out of control. So sensory rise, vestibular, which has to do with kind of balance. So that's where we'll see the stimming, like in rocking. So if rocking is helpful, if swinging is helpful, the trampoline can be really good. And maybe your kid studies better on the trampoline or while they're on a swing, or they're feeling upset and it's like, you know what, we're going to go to the park and we're going to swing it out and we're going to come back and change this depending on their age and their interest or whatever it is. But giving that body motion, right? Because motion and movement also creates dopamine, which will help regulate. Um, if they're sensory seeking, deep pressure, so whether that's like a squeeze or a weighted blanket or sour candy, or maybe it's loud music, something that can help redirect the nervous system. Some of us, sometimes we're on the ADHD side, we need the jolt to our nervous system to kind of be like, oh, okay, I'm back here right now. Um, can be helpful for those like sensory seekers. So it's going to be different for each person. It's going to be different in different situations. If I'm emotionally overstimulated, I'm going to need something different than when I'm stressed out overstimulated, right? So working with your kid and your family of figuring out as best we can about what are the different needs in different situations so that we can start identifying that for that regulation piece. Pain regulation is also very common for autistics and ADHDers because again, pain, adrenaline, dopamine regulation, right? There's a lot of ways that adults are allowed to use pain to regulate that kids are not allowed. If you think about exercising, marathons, there's been a whole bunch of posts about marathons lately. That looks so painful, but it brings people so much joy to run a marathon, right? That's pain regulation. That is a dopamine flood. Exercising that intensity, wearing heels and pain is beauty or beauty is pain, like that is a way. Tattoos, piercings, a lot of kink spaces, like pain is a piece of regulating, and adults are allowed to partake in that in ways that kids aren't. So, how do we find ways that pain can be used in a very controlled and safe way? There are fidgets called ouchies, and they have like spikes on them that don't break the skin, but cause that sharpness. So, think of like a sharp rock where you can like squeeze it and you can feel it in your palm. That can kind of bring a little bit of that sensation. An ice pack, especially if an ice pack goes on like the polyvagal nerve, that can help reset the nervous system. Exercise, a tight squeeze, any of those things that can help like jolt the nervous system. If they're more of like a soothing kid, they might need something really soft or a squishmallow or a furry animal. Decrease the lighting, soft music. What is do we need to reduce all of the stimulation? Because sometimes there's just too much and we need to reduce it. And then music, if you listen to music at 152 beats per minute, it actually is stimulating enough for the ADHD brain that it can lock in focus. So you can find playlists on all of the things that are 152 BPMs and pick the one that fits the genre you like, whether it's music, lyrics, or no lyrics. But I also like the idea of like Pavloving to like a soundtrack. So I have two albums that with that album, I only listen to that album when I need to focus. And when that album is on, work mode starts. And I've been doing this for like 15 years now. Those are the albums I use, and I can turn it on and I know I have 47 minutes that I'm going to zone in, and then I might put it on repeat 3 times. So like really creating like those spaces when they do need to focus or when they do need to relax. Some activities that go along with that can be for helping with the stimulation piece of the what's going on with the brain to release the dopamine, body doubling and parallel play. So you have another person to co-regulate with you, even if that's just they're doing homework at the kitchen table and you're making dinner, or you're sitting next to them doing bills and they're doing homework. So it's just kind of in that same space. It doesn't have to necessarily be interacting. Time blocking so that their brain can predict and anticipate how long they have to do stuff. Some some brains are different. So it's like, do I have to finish all of math right now? Or do I need to do math for the next hour? Right. And that can be different for the nervous system to be able to expect how long they're working on something. It doesn't mean maybe they're done for the night, but it's like, hey, in 1 hour, you get a break versus once you do all the 95 problems, you get a break because that can feel forever away. Dancing, movement, exercise, all of that is good for the nervous system. Fun fact, coloring lights up the same part of the brain as meditating. So if you have a kid that can't sit still and meditate, because I don't know who can, coloring or art or doodling gives that singular focus and helps regulate that part of the brain. Like I was already saying, like work with the deadline pressure as opposed to shaming around it. Utilize special interests and gamify things. So if there are specific tasks that are very mundane and boring or busy work from school they just don't want to do, how do we gamify it? How do we add a reward to it? How do we associate it with their special interests so that the motivation can kind of build up into it? So these are ways we can kind of hack the dopamine part of the brain to help regulate, but also to utilize focus or motivation in those spaces. That was a lot of words. So here's what we start to see if some of these supports are in place. This is a timeline that I've kind of put together from clinical experience over the last like 15 years with teens, but also in the research.
This is for mommy too. Okay, go.
So what I start to see with kids is about fourth, fifth grade, the anxiety starts to increase. They start to be a little bit more aware of the social differences or the social pressures or the importance of grades or different dynamics and become more self-aware of that and maybe self-critical. So the anxiety starts to ramp up. By fifth, sixth grade, the depression might start to creep in of feeling like I'm too much or I'm not enough or I'm working on this and it's not being seen or will things ever change? And we start to see the depression kind of build up then. By sixth, seventh grade, we'll see some more of the intensity of masking, and that's where we might see self harm. And that might be with eating disorders, that might be with physical injury, but they're starting to self medicate and figure out how can I control this situation? It's feeling like too much. And that might also be, that's often where we see kids start coming into therapy in those middle school years or going to higher levels of care, like an IOP, an intensive outpatient program or partial hospitalization. So by seventh, eighth grade, this might look like suicidal ideation. Maybe not attempts, but the thoughts might start popping in about like, will it always be like this? Will it ever change? This feels like too much. You might be seeing the burnout. You might start seeing anger. You might start seeing reactivity. And if that keeps boiling over, we tend to see a huge crash by ninth, 10th grade. And that might be not caring about school anymore, or it might be distancing from peers, or it might be just like constant. Maybe they're still perfectionistic about school, but you're seeing burnout constantly, or their ability to maintain the expectations starts to kind of shake a little bit. So, this is why I think it is so important to be aware of some of these signs earlier on so that we can, when the anxiety first pops up, let's start addressing it so that it doesn't develop to this same degree in depth over this timeline and we're not coming in the ninth grade crash out. So this is something I also pay attention to if I have like a 15-year-old come in who's never been diagnosed and we look back and we see this timeline is there, we immediately go in with that assessment for a neurodevelopmental difference. So I like to share this. You can kind of see like, where is my kid on here? Is this the pattern we're going with? Is this changeable? Where can we interject and kind of bring in more resources?
So we've talked a little bit about kind of where perfectionism comes from and the neurobiological aspects of it. Let's unpack perfectionism a little bit itself. And so when we were talking about this, a term that came up is the 150% effort phenomenon. A lot of times 2E learners feel like they have to consistently put in 150% effort to keep up with expectations, which then makes 100% effort feel inadequate and leads to burnout. And and that comes from like 2E kids learn to maintain their identity, their safety, their relationships, like we've talked about, through perfection, through high achievement. And so they feel like they need to operate oftentimes at 150% just to feel average and make up, so will you, for their lack of social abilities or books or street smarts, whatever. And so their baseline becomes overextension. They just don't even know what 100% feels like anymore. I remember it being, in undergrad and even in high school, I had teachers who would be like, I don't know how you do it or how you're, taking so many classes or whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just normal for me at this point because taking any less would feel like failing. It would feel like just being average, and average is never acceptable. And so that really also comes down to a fear of failure, not just disappointment, but obliteration, basically. If you've built your entire identity around being capable, mistakes become existential, right? They threaten the only stable part of your self-concept, because if your self-concept is based on what you're achieving and based on your other people's perceptions of you, it's going to be constantly evolving. Grades are very tangible, right? We can see, oh, I'm an all A student. And like kids get awards for that. And no wonder it becomes such a big part of identity. And no wonder it becomes such existential. Who am I outside of being a honor roll? And so that can create chronic anxiety, avoidance, and sometimes even total refusal to try unless success is guaranteed. Because I don't want to mess up. I don't want people to know that I can't do everything. So I'm only going to do the things I'm really, really good at. And then if we make a mistake on something we're good at, oh, I can't do that anymore. And we can see how the world becomes a lot smaller over time. And then there's also this recognition seeking. And I want to be clear, this is not about vanity at all. Oftentimes, kiddos place oftentimes getting recognition is one of the most consistent places that they receive positive emotional feedback. When kids learn to communicate through accomplishment, or the adults learn to communicate through accomplishment as well, because let's be real, as adults, we do place expectations on our kiddos unintentionally or intentionally. Um, then accomplishment becomes the primary language for love or pride. And then it gets equated with like stability and belonging. Perfectionism is never about the task, it's about self-preservation. It's about feeling like if I falter, I'll be seen differently, or I might be loved differently, whether or not that's been proven. And so as adults of kiddos, we have to be really careful not to, number one, confuse performance with well-being, and number two, to understand that when we say give it your all, well, sometimes kids are going to think give it your all means give it your all and then some, like 150%. So, underneath the perfectionism comes a lot of pressure. And something that's a very common experience in neurodivergent folks is rejection sensitive dysphoria. Rejection sensitive dysphoria is where real or perceived rejection, mistakes, anything like that feel really, really intense to a neurodivergent nervous system and very unsafe. Bad grades can lead to overwhelming stress and a fear of social rejection among peers, and the RSD kicks in. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough. See, I don't deserve people to care about me. And this creates a cycle where they push past capacity, burn out, crash, hide the crash, mask harder, repeat, because of the shame created from crashing. Even if we haven't crashed and we've just, been a normal teenager, that cycle still repeats. And so by adolescence, a lot of teens are so terrified of disappointing others that they, start to engage in academic avoidance, procrastination, shutdown, panic. I just can't do it at all if I can't do it perfect, which then adults can misinterpret as laziness or irresponsibility, when in fact, avoidance is protective. Avoidance says, if I can't guarantee perfection, I'm not going to do it because I don't want people to see my vulnerabilities, because vulnerability can feel really, really unsafe. And again, this is just a nervous system overwhelmed by expectation, not a lack of motivation. So what do we do about that, I guess? So another thing that comes along, well, I got to back up a second. PDA. My ADHD got ahead of me. So PDA is another thing that goes along with 2E learners a lot. So a definition I like to use of PDA is a nervous system response where everyday demands feel threatening and autonomy becomes the primary safety need. Meaning, in simpler terms, I want to direct my own life, and if I'm not directing my own life and what I want, even then it doesn't feel safe. And so that can look a lot like avoiding, if not perfect. Like we've talked about, also justice-driven avoidance. I've talked to so many of my clients and my own self of things that I've just not done because I didn't understand why the rules were the rules or why I had to do it. Busy work. I see this a lot with my 2E kids. Like, why do I have to do this? I already know this information. I don't need to prove this to you. Showing your work on a paper, that can also be an example of PDA. Like, why do I have to show you my work? I did it in my head. Well, because that's an expectation, but doesn't seem just. Um, it's also important to remember that motivation is not equal to initiation. So somebody can have all of the motivation in the world and want to do well. If I had to say, all of my clients have all the motivation in the world for the most part, and they want to do well internally, they just don't have the initiation to get started. And that's initiation is the nervous system's response, not the value-based motivation. We can value something, but not be in the nervous system place to be able to get started. And then also along with that, languaging can feel like a demand. If we tell a kid, you have to do this, there's so many demands on kids in general, but especially for 2E kids who then are perfectionists, taking every demand as the extreme, I have to do 150%, everything just gets really overwhelming. So some ways that we can help with task avoidance is number one, honor the neurodivergent justice system, validate fairness instincts, offer transparency on why expectations are expectations. Most of the time, if a neurodivergent can understand it, we're probably going to be way more on board with it. So offer transparency and collaboration. If your 2E learner is like, this doesn't make sense to me and here's why, I don't just shut it down. Collaborate. Help me understand why that doesn't make sense. Where are you coming from? What values are showing up for you? Lower the demand if we need to, soften the expectations, remove the urgency. So much of our world and our society just feels so urgent all the time. I often say, my skin feels like it's on fire and there's always somebody that needs something. If we feel that way as adults with fully formed brains and a nervous system that has somewhat had enough time to learn what to do with it, imagine how our tiny ones feel. And their brains are not fully formed and they are still learning many, many things. Does that mean that they don't know things? No, that means that the biggest thing they're still forming is emotion regulation. And create spacious pacing. Jamie talked about earlier working with your brain with deadlines instead of, against it. Supporting initiation, start with tiny entry points. Hey, can we do one problem on this math assignment? Hey, what would it be like to just go get our backpack from our room? We don't have to do anything else right now. With online school, hey, I've noticed sometimes you forget about your schoolwork. Can we bookmark that website just so that it's on the front of your mind? Oh my gosh, I got these really cool stickers. Do you want to put together a calendar and see how fun we can make it? So find the tiny little entry points. And pair that with co-regulation and sensory activation, going back to those neurochemicals. Use PDA safe languaging, making observations. I've noticed this. I wonder what it would be like if we did this, not, hey, you need to do this. That just keeps the brain from shutting down. It seems like such a small language shift, but it really does completely change how the nervous system responds to demands. And offering curiosity, behind every PDA reaction, behind every RSD reaction is a nervous system saying, I have a need. And that's helping to restore autonomy, providing choices, flexibility, alternatives, and escape routes. Sometimes I told one of my clients recently, I said, I just want you to try doing this for 5 minutes. And if after 5 minutes you hate it completely and you cannot do it, okay. You just got to give it 5 minutes. And oftentimes it's the initial hurdle of, oh, it's like the monster under the bed. If we look under the bed, we realize the monster maybe not as scary as we thought it was going to be in the first place.
That's inside out. Silly.
I love that. I often say to my clients, like, let's just do an experiment. Like, it might be silly, it might be cringe, but like, let's just do an experiment and see what happens. And that'll give us more information to know if this is going to be a fit for you or not. Which goes along with like, how do we reframe perfectionism and how do we work with it versus against it and lowering some of that like intensity for the demands. So I love this, but practice makes better instead of practice makes perfect, right? Because perfect's not achievable. It's not real. It doesn't exist. But you know what? Like we do have to practice things. That's why we have homework. We want to get better at stuff and we want to improve. But we're going to constantly be improving. That's what part of what learning is. So with practicing, practice makes better. We're emphasizing the growth that allows the individual to focus on the progress as opposed to the perfection or the outcome. And especially if we've got some all or nothing thinkers that might be really rigid in what the expectation is, we want to be introducing those steps along the way and not just celebrating you got the A on the test or we got the A on the grades or you finally turned in all of your homework assignments, but acknowledging the effort that goes into that. Oh, you got started. Great job. Hey, do you want to snack while you're working? Awesome. Like I'm so proud of you for doing this piece of acknowledging the effort as much as or more than the actual accomplishment, right? Because we also have some like um, delayed gratification delayed gratification can be real hard with these learners. So we need to give some of those rewards along the way. And it's not just once we reach the end or you finish the thing, but it's along the way that we're giving that those affirmations and those supports so that they stay motivated and stay engaged. Um, and sometimes too, so it makes sense as to like, why am I doing these tasks? Like if it's just to get into college one day, but I'm in eighth grade, like you got to connect that for me. We have to create those steps along the way about why that might be the goal, how that's valuable to my life today. Right now, we have these still developing brains that aren't thinking in the future that far. And that might feel like this really overwhelming burden of everything is writing on this class. And what if it doesn't work? Or what if I can't? Which turns into I'm not even going to try. If it can't be perfect, I don't even want to try it. If it takes me longer than 2 minutes, especially if we have kids who in elementary school could take a test without reading the material, who could finish where the first one's done with things, and now they're in middle school where the academic expectations are harder, or the class switches add something, or the social pressures increase. Now there's all these other factors that are making the learning environment more difficult, and maybe there's this feeling of well, if it doesn't come easy to me, I don't know how to study. I don't know how to do those points in between. What does that progress look like? A lot of us, that sequencing of steps can be really hard of like, okay, I can't fully see the end product. So I don't even know where to start or that initiation. So if we can help identify the steps along the way, it feels more attainable in that process. So looking at what are our values over our achievements. Are we valuing somebody who sticks with something and puts in their greatest effort? Are we valuing their loyalty and friendships? Are we valuing their honesty in addition to what they're doing in the academic space and being able to balance all of those? Like inside out was mentioned earlier, but like yeah, looking at that whole inside core person, what are our core beliefs? What are the things that are important to us? Because we're raising well-rounded kids that can show up in different spaces, and they might have strengths in one side and they might have difficulties in others. And how do we develop all of those muscles so that there isn't an imbalance in their nervous system? And that's where we start to find some of the authenticity of who are they? What are their values? What are the things that are important to them? Like a lot of stuff at school is a demand and it's prescribed and you have to do it this one way. So, how do we figure out the way that works for this brain and this nervous system and this kid in front of us so that they can achieve it, they can access it, and they feel that autonomy that they can do it their way? Because we want to teach the skill as opposed to just get it done, right? Um, and that helps with building that identity of self. So where masking may not be as necessary because they really know who they are and we've identified those core traits of what they value. Um, and talking about our core beliefs, SLED, core beliefs often come from what our expectations are. A lot of times when we're talking with little kids, a lot of that is led by the parents and what you believe you teach your kid, they come with you, they go along with it because they're new to the world and you're teaching them along the way. And once we start to get to middle school and high school, kids start to separate. They want to find their own identity, they want to find their own voice, they want to do it their way. And how are we setting them up for success in those spaces of being able to do it with autonomy and teaching them still that they don't have it all yet, but they want to feel like they do, and giving that like interdependence of like, I've got you if you fall, but I'm going to let you go so that we can kind of test that space. So being clear about what the expectations are. Often as adults, we say something and there might be additional meaning to what we're saying, or it might be interpreted different from the kids about like, hey, I need you to do the best in that class, and they're putting in 150% and they're having that crash. What is their best? What does that mean in your home and your family? Is that they were able to complete it, that they tried, that they did X, Y, and Z, and really determining what does your best mean? What happens if they trip along the way? What happens if the expectation isn't met? Is that clear as well? I think this comes in not only in like rewards, but also in punishments. If something comes up that they are grounded or there is a consequence, are we clear in like where this came from, what the expectation was, how long this consequence is lasting, how could they maybe earn their way out of it, so that there's a lot of clarity in the whole conversation. Because we started this off with a lot of anxiety comes from when things feel out of control, or there's a lot of unknowns, and that unknown and that loss of control increases the fear. So as much information as we can provide as to why, when, how, where, and this doesn't have to be a negotiation to where they're having as much say. You can still be the parent that has the boundaries and the rules, but bringing them into the discussion so they understand and have the buy-in about this is why it happened, this is why, this is what's happening, so that they learn that thought process that goes along with it to be able to make those choices when they move out, when they leave for college, when they're getting to live independently, because they learned what that thought process looks like. Um, which goes with the perfectionism of, um, are my expectations realistic, and what values do those meet? Is that a neurotypical or expectation? Is that a capitalistic driven expectation? Is that what I actually believe? Is that a should that I actually don't buy into? Is there an alternative that might still meet that need? And where does that come from societally? Is that coming from social pressure with peers? Is that coming from social media? Is that things that maybe educators are saying for what the classroom is, and that we can support a kid in advocating to ask clarity for the teacher? When you said do this, what did you actually mean? I need more context. So they can advocate and practice that for when they're in work environments. And if they're not given full context or they need accommodations, how do we talk about that versus feeling like we have to mask it or hide it? Or knowing when there are times we do have to mask, where like masking is a safety mechanism. And there are times that we do have to mask, or we need to be able to say, I want to mask now and I don't want to mask now. And how do we work that in together, that it's not just we all have to be able to unmask, because there is a necessity to it. And also to help reduce some of the shame of when it might be hard or when it might be difficult or when maybe they don't meet their own expectation. And maybe it was realistic and something else came up, or there's another chance, or they can keep trying. That it's not a one time and you fail, but like, okay, even if you failed a class, even if you have to take summer school, even if you have to do credit recovery, okay, you're retaking the class. It's still going to show up on your transcript. You can still transfer to college. You can still do these things. Grades can always be recovered. right? Mental health is the thing we want to prioritize, of making sure their mental health is good. We can always find other routes to correct academics or education or get what we need that way. So reducing that expectation of the shoulds that lead to the shame, that lead to the masking, that lead to the secrets. And a lot of those shoulds come from ableism and internalized ableism and the overall mental load that 2E brains are managing with all of the information they may be taking in, or what they're choosing to block out because it can be overwhelming. So often with internalized ableism, it's those intentional or unintentional shoulds of, I should be able to do this. I shouldn't be stressed by this. My classmates aren't spending 4 hours finishing this US history assignment, so I should be able to do this faster. I should be getting a better grade. Like, or I should have more free time because I want to rest. Like, where do those shoulds come from about what their capabilities are? And how are their alternatives? And how do we continue to reinforce that brains are different, environments are different, supports are okay? We need them for a lot of different reasons that aren't just based on their neurotype or their learning disability or whatever it may be. Because TUI learners often engage in the constant environmental scanning of seeing what are other people doing, what are other people needing, and assessing their surroundings for those potential threats or ostracization or just overwhelm of, like, I don't want to do the thing anymore because it is just taking too much out of me, and the burnout comes in early. There's a lot of social math that is going on for them to be able to calculate the dynamics of the environment and those expectations. And you might have kids who are just completely checked out of it about, like, nope, this is too much. I don't want to keep track of whatever the new hit thing is. That is not important to me. I am not into that, which good for them. But also that might mean there's isolation because they're not connecting with their peers because they are leaning into being their authentic self or not buying into whatever the social pressure is. But that, as great as that is, it also can be lonely. Um, and they're aware of that. Kids are very perceptive about what is accepted, what is not accepted, what behavior they might see their friend get bullied about, or it doesn't even have to be bullying. It could just be the side eye. You're standing in a group of people and you see a side eye when your friend does something or when you do something, that rejection sensitivity can be triggered and pop up. That creates this whole internal dialogue of the shoulds and how something should present in different environments. So talking through that, I think a lot of times as adults, getting to model what our own internal experience is in those environments about, like, oh, I had such a hard day today. Like at the PTA meeting, I was having a hard time keeping track of where the conversation was going because it was disorganized this week, right? You're naming it and you're giving them that validation that you experienced that too, or this happens in lots of areas of life. Um, so that it's clear that it's not just a them thing, that this is experienced by more people, and that there can be a normalizing experience of calculating all that information and tracking everything going on in their environment.
So that connects really well to support needs. Um, so oftentimes support needs are the exact opposite of what adults expect in 2E kiddos. And the first reason is alexithymia. So alexithymia, which is difficulties with interoception, which is difficulty with reading your body's cues, basically. It is not having emotions. I heard someone describe it as emotional color blindness, or if you microwaved a bunch of gummy candies together and you couldn't really separate them, but you can tell there's something there, but it just kind of seems like a big mess. Um, and so alexithymia can lead to not realizing needs, both physical and emotional, which then can lead to a crash from needs being unmet. It's like, I don't have needs. I don't have needs. Oh my God, I have too many needs. They can't all be met right this second. And then I'm suddenly in a meltdown or a burnout. Additionally, daily fluctuation is really a hallmark of 2E neurology. One day, your 2E learner might be able to do algebra in their head, and the next they can't start a simple worksheet. One day they can write a brilliant essay, and the next picking up a pencil feels like the hardest task in the world. A lot of times we as adults see this as inconsistency, but it's not inconsistency, it's kind of developmental reality of different times we're going to have different abilities based on where our nervous system is. makes sense in theory, but in the moment when we're trying to do our math homework and it's 8 p.m., feels really frustrating, right? And so that can also lead to internalized shame. Support needs may increase as burnout increases or demands increase, as Jamie was talking about earlier, as we get older and school demands increase. Suddenly, I can't meet those demands that were so easy, years ago. I don't know how to study, like Jamie said, and that can lead to a lot of shame. And so a learner may feel shame for higher support needs, especially if they were persistently celebrated for being mature and independent and high achieving and having it all together. And it's like suddenly you need help. I remember being told by one of my late middle school teachers, like, you never need help. Like you were always like, you've never needed help. What's up with you? And it was like this big shame thing for me because I was like, well, what's up with me is like I just need help. Why is that so weird? But it made me not want to ask for help again because it felt like everyone was allowed to ask for help but me. And that goes back to that peer comparison we talked about earlier. Like, I can't be the one struggling because I'm struggling. What does that mean for other people? And so I always like to kind of go back to this diagram, which is the circle of security. And it's I did not create this. It's by Cooper and Hoffman, and it's from a parent training course for kids, for parents who have their own trauma. Um, but what's really important is we often assume that giftedness equates to independence or emotional independence, that if a child can explain their feelings, they must also be able to regulate them. Or if a child can being on all these clubs and do all these amazing things. Like, why can't they just have like decent behavior? And the thing is, cognition doesn't regulate our nervous system. Giftedness doesn't replace attachment. Insight doesn't soothe overwhelm. And so, what kids need is a secure base. They need you to support their exploration to go out into the world. They need you to watch over them, make sure that they're safe, delight in them, show that you are proud of them, that you're happy with who they are and thrilled with them as a person, help them when they need it, and enjoy with them. So that's kind of them going out into the world, doing the cool things, exploring, and then something goes wrong. When something goes wrong, kids need a safe haven to return to. They need you to welcome their coming to you. They need you to protect them. They need you to comfort them. And there's one thing that's the same on the top and the bottom, which is delight in me. They need you to be thrilled with them when they're doing well and when they're struggling. And that can be hard sometimes to remember is my kid needs celebrated in their hardest moments, not just their highest moments. And they need you to help them organize their feelings. And so the saying is like, always be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. When possible, follow my child's need. And when necessary, take charge. Yeah. And so, how do we do that? Really through curiosity. Curiosity is one of the most powerful relational tools that we have. It interrupts judgment, it challenges internalized narratives, it prevents adults from defaulting to punitive interpretations of behavior. Curiosity says, instead of assuming what this behavior means, I'm going to wonder. I'm going to let you show me instead of forcing you to align with what I expect. When we explore the underlying need, everything changes. What need is this behavior meeting? What safety is this child trying to create? What overwhelm is this child trying to solve? Clarifying expectations reduces anxiety, especially demand anxiety. Oftentimes, 2E learners are going to set the bar really, really high if we let them set it themselves. And so, kind of showing what is the bar really? Kids are often terrified of disappointing us, themselves, or peers, and vague instructions just create panic. Um, Also, break things up. Breaks are not rewards or escapes, they're regulation tools. Prevent meltdowns before they have to occur. I know for myself, if I hit 2 hours of one thing consistently and I have not had a break, my brain is dead. I'm about to scream into a void or someone's face. We don't know yet. And so divide tasks into, I don't actually scream at people to be clear, but divide tasks into manageable steps. Break, like Jamie mentioned earlier, show them how to get from point A to point B if need be, because when we're just staring at the mountain, it can be hard to find the first foothold. Um, And then also allow emotional expression, provide space for meltdowns, provide space for having big feelings, for this isn't fair, for this kind of sucks and I'm not having a good time. Curiosity communicates safety, control communicates fear, and fear shunts learning and connection down.
So we're working with our kids about building identity, building that authenticity piece, building their voice so that we can help them advocate, but also remove the mask and find the spaces in which they are accepted and validated and seen for all their greatness. And so moving beyond the mask, we're developing that self concept of what they connect with, what their special interests are, where their values are, what their hopes and dreams are, so that they can identify in those spaces. So, moving beyond perfectionism and achievement allows individuals to embrace their unique strengths while reducing the pressure of living up to those societal expectations. So, we're bringing in other values, we're bringing in other goals, other achievements that might move beyond just academics. And also, if academics is where we thrive, how do we learn to balance it and how to regulate it and how to move into it with intention and control so that it doesn't become overburdensome? And embracing that authenticity, embracing the quirks, embracing the unique way of learning or gaining that information, understanding that also reflecting on what might be our as an adult, our internalized ableism of what that expectation might be of expecting our kids to have multiple friends. Is that what they want? Is that how they socialize? Do they need to hang out in person? Are they okay hanging out in online spaces? How do they reach out and find the people that they do connect with to build those environments? And that it may not be until they're in college or they're able to be in other spaces or be in a new social group. So, how do we identify that and support them in developing that authenticity and being proud of who they are, um, in order to advocate? So, connecting with their true selves, facilitating their healthy expression of identity, that also having anxiety is going to be a thing that shows up. So, not shaming that piece of them, how to know that anger is okay, that we are allowed to have every emotion, and how do we want to choose to express it, right? That it's okay to be angry, but how do we want to let it out? It's okay to use pain regulation, but how do we want to do it in a safe way? It's okay to dislike doing this activity. And how do we want to express that to the people around us so that they do have that autonomy and choice in building their voice?
So, practical strategies, because we know it's great to understand why something's happening, but what to do about it. We've said this a couple times, but clear expectations, establishing clear expectations is crucial for reducing anxiety. By outlining specific achievable tasks, we help kids understand what's required, making them feel more secure. And that's not just about clear expectations with homework. That's clear expectations when it comes to how we interact in the family, what's expected at home, what's expected emotionally from you, what's expected in how you contribute to society. Expectations exist everywhere. I think sometimes we forget that. So having the conversations not just about schoolwork, but about expectations overall. And then breaking things into manageable, gradual steps. Like we've talked about a few times, it encourages a sense of accomplishment as each step is completed. Also allowing, I messed up the flow of our slides earlier, I think.
I did too. I think I took one of your slides earlier.
I think I took one of your
Oh,
slides.
no.
Okay. So
We're not perfect either.
that was why I hesitated. Okay. So also allowing space for emotion regulation or emotional expression, like we talked about earlier, understanding and supporting emotional needs. Meltdowns are okay. I am a full-blown therapist with 2 degrees in emotions and what to do with them. Do you think I don't have meltdowns sometimes? Please let my dog tell you I do. And sometimes he's the tissue. But allowing space for meltdowns creates an environment where emotional expression is valued, fostering safety and understanding rather than punishment or criticism for dysregulation. As long as we're melting down safely and, it's not taking away our ability to function, a good cry is really great sometimes. Or however meltdown looks for your learner. It's okay to have big feelings, and it's okay for those big feelings to come out really, really messy, as long as that messy is safe. And also recognizing nervous system states. Recognizing the different nervous system states helps in understanding responses. If we know what's happening, it's not some big unknown, which we've established. What do neurodivergent people not like? Unknowns. So if we can, I like to say, like, name it to tame it. So if we understand the different responses, that enables therapists and parents to better support learners through their fluctuating emotional experiences.
And to make sure that you are equipped with lots of resources, here is a list of some books that are great starting points for understanding like the neurodivergent brain, the emotional reactivity that might be coming up, perfectionism. I may have been biased to put my book at the top of the list, but that's okay. Um, but some of these are really great for nurturing an autistic young person. The Autistic Burnout Workbook by Dr. Megan Anna Neff, The Explosive Child by Dr. Ross Green. He also has like a parent and a therapist protocol called Collaborative Proactive Solutions that really works on that dynamic of collaborating between the kid and the adult to meet expectations. And the idea is like, if a kid is not meeting expectations, it's because they can't. And so, how do we shift expectations to make them have more achievable steps? And then You're on Fire, It's Fine is for the parents of kids who have big emotions and may be in that kind of crisis state. These are some organizations that have a lot of additional information that might be fitting for your kiddos. PDA North America, Neurodivergent Insights, which is Dr. Megan Anna's platform. NeuroPebble is my continuing education platform. Parents and caregivers are welcome to take the courses too, but there's also CEs available for clinicians. Autism Career Pathways, which is actually in the Bay Area. They have a lot, Maisie has a lot of information and resources on supporting young adults into the workforce and training employers on how to support neurodivergent brains. Yellow Ladybugs has a lot of great information. The Stoll Learning Center works with a lot of kids who are 2E. I know there's multiple locations in SoCal, but they also have a podcast and they also have free resource and downloads to support like learning disabilities and 2E kids. Embrace the Muchness has a huge resource list for all things ADHD related. It's absolutely amazing. ndtherapist.com is a directory for self-identified neurodivergent clinicians. This QR code takes you to my full resource list with books, podcasts, organizations for a number of different things. And we wanted you to have this as well so you can continue to have the resources to support you in your relationship with your kids. And that's what we've got planned for today.
I want
So
to add a couple I
yeah.
forgot to add to the list real quick that I just remembered today, if that's okay. There is a book, Embracing Intensity. Yeah, Embracing Intensity, I think, or Living with Intensity. That's what it is. Living with Intensity. I forgot what I was going to say. Living with Intensity is an amazing book about living with giftedness and reframing it as intensity in intellect, and intensity in emotion, intensity in sensory stuff. And then Navigating Your Rainforest Mind is also a really great one.
I thought of another one. This weekend, there's a conference called Autistic Clinical Insights, and Rainn and I are both, I have two presentations. Rainn has five, and we're doing one together on neuroqueering therapy for teens. And it is all autistic focused content, very specific things. I think there's like 25 presentations over 3 days. They're all going to be recorded. It's a very low entry fee. But it has a lot of big names in the autistic space who are talking about really relevant information. That's Autistic Clinical Insights Summit Conference. I don't remember. But yeah,
Just Autistic Clinical Insights.
perfect. Cool.
Thank you guys so much. This was so dynamic and fascinating, and I learned so much. Yeah, I took like, I don't know, 10 pages of notes over here. So we got some questions, and please feel free to add more questions to the chat, and we will ask away. Okay. Now I have to organize myself. Someone's asking about the 152 BPM for kids. Do they have it also for kids who are young, like 7 to 9 years old?
I bet I would just go on Spotify or YouTube or any of those and put in 152 beat per minute playlist, and you can check and look at the lots of people have made playlists. And I think you can also look up specific songs. I'm sure there are kids songs that also meet that.
I
That's,
know on Spotify at least there are some because I've sent them to kids before.
oh, awesome. That's great that it's in every genre. Okay, I was not the gifted 2E kiddo. My untreated, not remedied dyslexia ruled me out of traditional gifted identification. This can be how some 2E kids experience 2E. How do the not gifted in traditional academic ways 2E kiddos show perfectionism outside of academics, and how do we identify that and support them?
I think wherever that strength is showing up, like I always, from a strength-based perspective, I like to work with people about like what is working for you. And that might just be like maybe you organize your space well, and that allows you to feel regulated. And maybe that you're perfectionistic about how your space is organized because that allows you to show up in other places. But how is that seen as a strength? Where does that line cross into maybe perfectionism? How can we utilize where your strengths are to build on that and expand in other areas? About why is this working? What does this provide you? Could that apply over here as well? And what about over here? And so really looking at like what are the ways it can benefit someone? What are the ways it might be hindering them? And that's still kind of a broad response.
Yeah. And how does it feel in your nervous system? You know, sometimes like trusting intuitively, how does it feel behind what you're doing, if that makes sense?
Mhm. It does make sense. Someone said, are there games or fun strategies to help our kids see themselves unmasked and enjoy being unmasked?
Yeah, I mean, any game that I think allows somebody to be silly or like that invites like the whole group to be silly or opens up safety for that vulnerability. When I was running teen group therapy, we would do a music group. And so before the group, we would pick an emotion. So even if it was anger, or if it was sadness, or it was shame. And so between sessions, they'd send me in a song. And then anonymously, I would play the songs and I'd print out the lyrics. So then in this group environment, we were able to see behind the mask or the facade because they weren't having to name it themselves. And it brought this like normalization because I'd play one song and somebody would be like, oh my God, I almost sent that song in for mine. And then it would open up that dynamic. So creative spaces tend to be a really great way to unmask because it really invites like outside of the box thinking, outside of the box creativity. I mean, theater can often be that too, because then you get to wear different masks. And when you get to explore different masks, you get to try on different aspects of maybe I really like to do this, but when I get to say it's for this character I'm playing, it's safe. But actually, I was accepted and everybody liked me doing that character and I got a lot of praise. So I actually think it's okay for me to be like this in other spaces.
Great it is.
I love that. I also do a lot of art activities. If you can split a piece of paper down the middle and like kind of draw out like what does it look like when I'm masked and what does it look like when I'm unmasked on the other side. I'll have kiddos make Pinterest boards too of find me pins that represent your unmasked self or your masked self. And then also role play. A lot of teens especially are into role play. And that goes along with the theater and kind of improv, but you can also explore some of their favorite stories with them. And why do you relate to that character so much? Is that parts of you that maybe are more masked that you wish you could show more? Kids speak through their special interests just as much as through their mouths sometimes.
I love that. We have in the chat, Callie is like writing down all your amazing quotes, and she wants to make t-shirts of all of them. Just so you know, that's our new real revenue stream. So
Tag us in it. So for neuropebble, it's neuropebble because one of the neurodivergent languages is penguin pebbling because penguins, when they like somebody, they'll find a pretty rock and they'll gift the rock. And so neurodivergent people, that's how we show love as well. And so neuropebble is where we share our ideas and we penguin pebble them with sharing it. So I made stickers that say my brain collects facts like pebbles.
oh,
This is our
Just
branding for that.
just to be clear, we would not use your intellectual property without your permission and some kind of partnership agreement.
Um, okay, how do you balance pushing kids to try something that you know they're gonna like, or you think they're gonna like, versus honoring their nervous system?
I would be curious how you know they're gonna like it and what their resistance is. Because the avoidance has a functional reason behind it. Are they avoiding it because they don't think they're gonna be immediately good at it? Go back to unpacking perfectionism strategies. If they're avoiding it because of PDA, go back to PDA strategies. So I would really unpack, okay, it's not about them not wanting to do it, or I think sometimes I hear from parents, especially like, it's because I suggested it. And it's like, maybe partially, but there's probably also a lot of reasons behind it too. Um, and so, yeah, I would be curious about the need that's getting met by not taking that suggestion, as well as what assumptions are being made by like the person suggesting it, not assumptions in a bad way, but assumptions about like where the kid's regulation is, or tolerance level, or burnout level, or extra ability to take on extra demands, or even ability to do something new at that point. Because we can only do so many new things in a period, or we're gonna lose it.
And I would add to that, how can we front load expectations? If it's you think that they're going to really love soccer, can we watch videos on YouTube about what soccer practice looks like for their age? How many unknowns can we answer or anticipate or drive that route to help prepare their nervous system? But I agree with Rain about like, what is the barrier? What is, did they have a really long, stressful day at school and now doing another activity today doesn't feel like it? And talking through that to where I talk with my clients that there are days that we're allowed to take a mental health day, and there are times we have to push through, and there are times that you get so many mental health days in a period of time, and other times we have to show up and do the thing, so that there's a negotiation in there and they feel like they still have autonomy, that they can raise the white flag and be like, yo, not today is not the day, but they also know that there's a limited amount of times that they can do that. And like I said before, like framing things as an experiment. Let's do an experiment. Let's see what happens. I tell my client with like homework in between sessions, whether you do the thing or you don't do the thing, it gives us information for what's going to work. So we're going to do an experiment. We're going to go to this art class, and we're going to gather information. Right now, it's a lot of unknowns, whether you're going to like it or not, or if the people are nice or not. So let's go. Let's gather facts. Let's gather information to make an educated decision about if we're going to come back to the next time, and keeping that conversation open. Um, so that they feel like there's still a say and they're not now locked into something for whatever that class period or whatever the thing is amount of time.
Gosh, I love all your answers, especially thinking through. I never thought about like the number of new things in a row.
Mhm.
Okay. My homeschool kid, who is homeschooled due to educational trauma, now compares himself to the friends that remained in the public school and are doing APs, SATs, et cetera, et cetera. How can I help him appreciate him for himself? He does so many amazing self-driven projects, which I think are so much cooler than the prescribed curriculum.
I would wonder too, do we also validate the grief that's there? Like the reality of it. That is a different life. That is a different experience. They are getting different things. And there can be comparison and there can be grief there. And two things can be true at the same time. I think that like that didactic, no, what
Dialectic.
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 Thank you. Like that's a big thing we come back to, that two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that his projects are more exciting and that this is a better fit, and it can be true that that's like a high school experience that we were told we're supposed to have. This is the should, because I'm not doing the shoulds, I'm different, but being different is kind of where I want to be, but I also feel like I'm missing out on this. Like both of those are true, and we have to validate both sides of those. And if we jump right to you're great, you've got a superpower, this is happening, it negates that piece of them that is still feeling that grief or that sadness or that missing out piece.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, Jamie. I took a non-traditional school route myself in high school. I was in public school through middle school, hit really, really bad burnout. And I was like a pilot program for the online school. And I do not regret for a moment my alternative schooling. It allowed me to go to college when I was 16, and I loved it. And I'm so grateful that I was able to, get started in my career path so young. And also, there are a lot of experiences I will just never have. And it did change me developmentally. And there is grief of like, I don't have like high school best friends that I still call up, or like, I don't have like silly little memories, maybe, or even like some of the same awards on my wall that some others may have. And so and so also, I think I work with a lot of homeschoolers as well. And I like to say, like, you're not going to get an award for the fact that you're probably the only student that got like 8 hours of sleep last night. Nobody's going to give you like a certificate for getting a solid 3 meals a day without having to walk through a lunch line. And so the dialectics of like, yes, you are missing these things, and it's okay to be sad about that, especially in the context of, I know for me, I was like, I'm tired of being different all the time. Like, I just for 1 second would like to do one thing that's normal. Now that's just a setting on the dryer, but also honoring like, hey, when you already feel so different, and then this is another thing you're doing differently, that does feel sad sometimes, especially in online spaces of comparison.
Oh, beautiful, compassionate answers. Thank you. Um, Advice on balancing the needs of newly diagnosed neurodivergent young adults versus neurotypical. For instance, a neurotypical would be encouraged to have an internship in addition to classes or in the summer, but an ND kid might want more time to decompress. Or teaching our NT kid manners is expected, but may have been alienated to our ND kid without us knowing.
I love this. I first like to examine where those expectations come from. I put expectations on myself as an adult who's already done a lot of unpacking that actually come from places that I don't value. And so, kind of figuring out, do I value these expectations? Like when we talk about manners, where are the manners that we're talking about coming from? Is it secret internalized ableism that's coming out, or externalized ableism? Is it steeped in, societal norms that may lean towards that are like patriarchal very often, and colonialistic. And so unpacking, why do I expect what I expect? Number one, is it out of necessity, or because that's what I think the world expects me to expect of my kid? And number two, like if it is out of necessity, how can we meet the need that's showing up in a way that still affirms the nervous system in front of me? Like if you, okay, having an internship while in school, or over the summer, is that because like they really need that experience because you're worried about their resume? What's your fear coming from if they don't do these things?
Absolutely. I would agree with that about like where are these expectations coming from? What purpose are they serving and at what cost? Right? If they're in school and doing an internship, at what cost? Is that going to lead to burnout in a year where they can't get out of bed for 6 months? Is there a way that, like, okay, the timeline may be shifted? I think a lot of us have been prescribed this timeline of how things are supposed to go, of you get to high school, you take AP classes, you go to college, you get an internship, you get a job, you are living independently. And that isn't realistic for a lot of people. And that's also not the only way to get somewhere. College doesn't have to just take 4 years. College can take another route. It can have a gap year. It can have junior college before university. It can have an internship that comes after. Because as long as you get the experience, you've gotten the experience, but those checkpoints might be shifted because you do have a kid who has a disability, right? And like we can look at it and like in some places it doesn't feel disabling, but in our capitalistic society or in these pressures we have or in a neurotypical world, there are aspects that are disabling in these environments, and how are we supporting your child's disability, and that what can they manage, what can they handle, and how are we building those tiers to get them to that level of being able to handle more, and how do we accept the reality that there might be things that your ND kid doesn't do in the same way that their NT peers do.
And I think like the adults in those kiddos' life and those kiddos grieve that. I know I've grieved the things that I thought I was going to be able to do that I couldn't, or the things that I could do 2 months ago that I couldn't do in a period of burnout. And sometimes parents have to grieve what they expected their kid's life to look like in some ways, and in turn, in exchange for embracing what it actually does. And I also want to say that while we're planning for the future for our kids and wanting the best for them, we also have to remember that we want them to be living their best life now. Just like Jamie said earlier, like there's a lot of different routes to get places. Mental health has to be foremost so that they can get those places.
I love that. And the connection that you keep with them by honoring all the things that you guys have talked about tonight. So there are more questions, but it is 8:30, and so I'm going to honor your time and your needing to decompress. And thank you so much. This was absolutely one of the most dynamic, engaging, informative sessions I've ever seen. So you guys rock. And
Thank you
there's
so much for having us. This was super fun. The questions were fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much.
so many amazing thank yous and hearts and everything in the chat. I've never even seen these effects before, so so thank you guys so much. And we will send out the recording. There's a feedback link in the chat, and Jamie and Rainn have been so gracious as to share the slides as well, so we'll send those out as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.